just to talk about what I'm going to highlight in particular, I'm going to start by just showing you how you can find all of our legal research resources. And then I'm going to talk about the audiovisual library, the treaty website, and talk about the 2 databases that are available on the treaty data website. Then some of the codification publications, so the publications that are produced by the Codification Division of the Office of Legal Affairs. And then finally, I just want to highlight a product that recently came to our notice that I think is a very good product if you're looking at the internal justice system of the UN. In this session, it's hard to cover everything because there's, even when you say it's only legal resources, there's still a lot of different types of legal resources. So once again, the chat is always available for you. So if you want to type something into the chat, and as I said at the end of the session, I'm happy to answer any questions of anything that I may not have covered in this session. So with that, I'm going to start with just your basic how to find the UN legal databases. From our website, there's a little drop-down menu here that's called Find and then Databases. And then when you click on Databases, you choose International Law. And then from there, you would choose UN databases. So I'm going to go to a browser and just show you that. So here from the UN website, which is un.org/library, you would go to Find, then Databases. And then from Databases here, International Law. And when I click on International Law, you'll actually see I'm getting a combination of our subscription resources and our freely available resources. So anytime you see this little icon here or this icon here, that actually means they're subscription resources. This means it's available through IP, and this means it's available off UN campus. And then when there's nothing here, it means that it's freely available. And so this is something that everyone can access. So just to show you here under all resource types, when I'm in the international law section here, if I choose UN databases, then I'm getting specifically the UN resources. So you can see there's a listing here. There's quite a few, some of which are coming from, for instance, the FAO or the ILO. And so there's lots and lots of resources that we have listed here. So I'm just going to highlight a few that we use quite frequently in answering reference questions in the library. So going back to my PowerPoint, I'm going to start with the Audiovisual Library of International Law. So the Audiovisual Library of International Law here, that's this one here. When I click on it, I get to this welcome page. I'll choose English. I will tell you these pages are available in 6 official languages, but sometimes you will find the content itself might only be available in English or French. So this just changes the interface, not necessarily the content. So this is basically a freely available library of international law that the Codification Division has put out. And there's lots of resources on here. There is a research library, and under research library, it will link to a lot of useful websites to know about that relate to treaties, that relate to court cases or jurisprudence, that sort of thing there. There's also a lecture series. So if you wanted to see some legal scholars talk about particular topics in international law, you just click on any of them and you'll get a video there. There's a mini series as well, which is basically the same thing as the lecture series. It's just they're shorter videos, and they're on sort of more basic level of international law. But the part of the Audiovisual Library of international law that we like a lot in the library is this historic archives here. And what the historic archives is it's basically the negotiating history of a number of UN treaties or treaties that have been negotiated under the auspices of the UN. So if I go under list of instruments over here, you'll see there's a whole list here. There's one on the Slavery Convention, one on principles of international law, here, one on genocide, that sort of thing. So there's a whole listing of that, or you can go under a subject. So if I, for instance, went under refugees and stateless persons, I'm just going to show you an example of what each of these entries will look like. So I'm going to click on this one that relates to the convention relating to the status of refugees. And all of these entries in this historic archives are structured this way. There's always an introductory note that is available in all 6 official languages. And it's written by a scholar that specializes in this case, in international refugee law. And if you scroll down, you can see it's a big description of this convention. Scrolling even further down, you can see it will tell you related legal instruments and then related documents. Sometimes there's also a bibliography with this. So it's a very good introduction to that convention or to that treaty. So that's the introductory note. Under procedural history, this will explain the process through which this convention came into being. So it's sort of a narrative form that will tell you that this resolution from ECOSOC was established the ad hoc committee, and then the ad hoc committee had a report with commentaries and that sort of thing there. So you can sort of read that to get an idea of how this convention sort of came into being. The part that we find very valuable is under documents here. And the reason that we find this very valuable is because when you click on documents here, you get, what sometimes are called the travaux préparatoires or the negotiating history or the preparatory documents. And you can see sometimes they will be hyperlinked. Sometimes you'll have reference to them, so you can just note down the UN document symbol and then check against the official document symbol or against the official document system or the UN Digital Library just to confirm whether those documents are available. So it's a good way if you were to look at a particular convention or treaty and you wanted to see the negotiating history of it. Under this documents here, you'll find that information there. So we often will send people to this documents tab that's here. Under status, this actually goes to the treaty website and to the status of multilateral treaties deposited with the Secretary General, which I'm going to talk about next, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. And then under audio, you've got some audio recordings that are put there. And under photo, you've got some photos that relate to this convention. We find for ourselves, as I said, that documents tab is the one that is most useful. So that again is under historic archives, and then you go into whichever instrument you're looking at, and then you go to documents. So that's one place that I just sort of want to highlight that is there. There's a lot of other content as well on this Audiovisual Library of International Law, but that's what we in particular find useful. I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint, make sure I covered everything. So yeah, there's a specific legal instrument, and then each of them will have those different elements to it. Next, I'm going to talk about treaties. So the Audiovisual Library of International Law, when you go here and you click on status of treaties, this is actually taking you to the treaty website, to the database I'm going to talk about first. But before I get into that database itself, just to talk about the treaty website a little bit, there is also a lot of content on this site. So this site is managed by the treaty section of the Office of Legal Affairs. Under overview, you can find things like glossary of treaty terms if you're not familiar with them, an FAQ about questions relating to treaties. One, I think, very useful resource here is under resources. There is something called the Treaty Handbook, and there's something called the Final Clauses Handbook. So if I click on Treaty Handbook here, you can see this is available in all 6 official languages. It's about 70 pages or so, and it is basically produced for the different permanent missions to talk about the Secretary General's practice as the depository of multilateral treaties and the registration and publications of treaties. So oftentimes when we get questions about how a treaty works and, like what it means to be a signatory, what it means to have reservations or something like that, we point people to the Treaty Handbook. Very similarly, the Final Clauses Handbook, this is on the very final clauses of treaties. So I like to sort of describe it as the nuts and bolts of the treaty that explain how that treaty works. There's a very similar publication here. So usually, you know, if you're looking for some information about how a treaty is working or how the Secretary General or the Secretariat works in terms of its role with treaties, I would recommend those two resources that are available in the 6 official languages. So I just wanted to highlight that there are those things there. Also, if you scroll down to the bottom here, there is a website user guide. So if you don't remember what I show you today, there is that guide to sort of help you through things. There's also an automated subscription service. So if you click here, you can register under new user registration and get notified when new things have been added to the different treaty databases. There are 2 treaty databases that I want to focus on when I'm talking about the treaty website, and the first one is this one here, Status of Treaties. So what Status of Treaties is, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. It is over 560 multilateral treaties deposited with the Secretary General. That's what the website says. I think it's closer to over 650. It's probably even more. It changes. The thing to remember, it's in the hundreds, and these are the treaties that are designated to be deposited with the Secretary General. So the Secretary General is the depository of them. And what this status of treaties will tell you is the latest consolidated status. It will tell you information about who the participants are for this multilateral treaty, and then any declarations, any reservations, any communications a member state may have communicated that will be captured in the status of treaties. It's arranged by chapter, but you can also search by title, and it's found under the depository drop-down menu. So here is the depository drop-down menu, and then status of treaties. And then here you can see it is organized like a book. So each chapter will focus on a particular subject. So if I say went under chapter 27 here for the environment, and when it comes up, I'll have the various multilateral treaties related to the environment that have been deposited with the Secretary General. Scrolling down a little bit, you'll see here, there's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and then the relating subsequent agreements under that convention, including right here, you find the Paris Agreement. You'll notice this has been given 7, and then the subsequent ones have been given A, B, C, and D. And often in references that you may find in books or journals, they might make reference to this chapter, and then they'll say 7D. So that's what that reference, when you see it, is referring to. So when I click on Paris Agreement here, this is the kind of information this status of treaties is showing me. It's showing me the status as of this morning. So the website gets updated every day, and it will tell me this is what the status is as of this morning. It gives me information about when this entered into force, when it was registered, who the signatories are and the parties. And when I click here, I'll get certified true copy of the treaty itself. So you can see that is a link that you can share that's coming from the Status of Treaties website, and it is the certified true copy version. Under notes, it will tell me a little bit more about this treaty. And then when I look down here, you can see I can see the different participants, when they signed and when they ratified, or if they became party to the treaty through other means like accession or acceptance or approval. Scrolling down just a little bit, actually quite a bit because there's quite a few signatories to this. If I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see some of these are hyperlinked. And the reason that they're hyperlinked is because you can see here, there's the declarations. So this will tell you that Belgium made a declaration upon signatures. which sort of tells you a little bit about what they are intending when they sign this treaty. Scrolling down further, you can then see some endnotes as well. So basically what this database is doing is it's collecting all that information that's being communicated about this treaty, and it's putting it together on, or this agreement, and it's putting it together on one page, and it's telling you that as of today, this is where this treaty stands. These are the participants, these who have signed it, these are who ratified it, and these are any communications that have been expressed during that time. So you can navigate it by choosing your chapter and then choosing the section that you want to go into. So as I said, you can go under environment and then scroll down to Paris Agreement. You can also do a title search. So if I click here under title search and I put in my keywords and I look for Rome Statute, just as an example, you can see I have here the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and then some subsequent agreements and amendments that are here. And then if I click on any of these, it will tell me more about the parties, the registration, the certified true copy, and who's a participant and how they ratified or accepted that treaty. So that's the status of treaties. It's under status of treaties here. Also under status of treaties, you can search by certified true copy. But since you find the certified true copy just by looking under that first one there, I'm not sure it's necessary to do a search that way. You can also search for depository notifications through that too. So that's the one database that is specifically as it relates to these multilateral treaties that the Secretary General is a depository to. The other database I want to talk about on the treaty website is in fact the UN Treaty Series. So that one you find under registration and publication. So registration and publications is the other side of what the treaty section does. It monitors the status of treaties deposited, but it also is the place where countries can register their treaties, and then the UN will publish these treaties. Going back just to my PowerPoint here, you were talking about 650 treaties under the status of treaties. Under the UN Treaty Series, it's over 250,000 treaties and treaty actions. And it's including both multilateral and bilateral treaties. It includes treaties that the Secretary General is not the depository for, someone else is the depository for. And so it's basically your biggest collection of treaties that you're going to find anywhere. Treaty texts are available in English, French, and the authentic language or languages of that treaty. So if a treaty was written in Spanish between two Spanish countries, it will also be available in English and French, and also in Spanish. It includes the entire print publication of the UN Treaty Series, and then other treaties that have been registered but not published. And as I said, you can find it from that drop-down menu for registration and publications. The default when you get to the UN Treaty Series here is this advanced search. And the advanced search here is what I recommend doing. You can see you can also do a volume search here if you want to search a particular volume of the treaty series. So oftentimes in a citation, you might see a treaty series volume cited. So you can search there by volume. You can do a title search if you want, or a participant search. The reason I suggest doing an advanced search is because it would allow you to do a title search and a participant search and a volume search. It allows you to do all of those searches in one thing. You sort of have to figure out a little bit how it's working though. So here under the advanced search, if I scroll down, here I can choose to search under a particular action like something that's been registered, that sort of thing. CN stands for depository notification. CTC would be the certified true copy. I can search for maps, or I can search for the treaties themselves, which is what I'm going to do here. And then I say what I want to filter by. So if I wanted to do a participant search, I can do that here by choosing under filter by participant. Now here, when I'm searching by participants, I can start typing in what I'm looking for. Then I want to select them there. You can see it goes over to this section here that says selected values. And then I want to click here to add to search criteria. And you want to watch this box here, this search criteria, because that is ultimately what you're searching for. The default is set to match all these values, which means that it is looking for treaties that both Australia or Austria have signed. Just to give an example of when you might want to use match any of these values, I'm going to take off Austria and Australia. And if I type in Germany, for instance, you can see, for instance, there's Germany, Federal Republic of, there's also the Federal Republic of Germany. I don't know which one it is. In this case, I might say match any of these values, and it would be searching for either one of those. So that's when I would use match any of these values, but normally I would use match all of these values. So I'm going to choose Australia and Austria, add to search criteria, and then I click on search. Now, when I click on search here, you can see the first one I'm getting is in fact a multilateral treaty that both Australia and Austria have signed. I can actually sort. You'll see right now it's sorting by title, but if I say hover over date of conclusion here, I can get the oldest ones or the newest ones, or I can click on treaty type to get the bilateral ones at top or the open multilateral ones at top. There's the option to export to Excel here. So if I wanted to export this into an Excel spreadsheet and then work with the data there, I can do that. Now, let's say I wanted to look at only bilateral treaties. What I want to do then is go back to my search and do it again. Now, I don't want to click the back button up here. I want to click this back button here. And then you can see, if I scroll down, I've got my participants in there. And now I'm going to add another filter. So now I'm going to say treaty type. And then I say bilateral. It goes over to selected values, add to search criteria. And then when I click on search here, I'm going to get only the bilateral treaties between Austria and Australia. If I go back, let's say I want to add something more on here, I could add a search by the English title. So I can search for Social Security, add to search. Now here, you see it says you match this phrase, which means that the default is looking for Social Security together. Generally speaking, what I advise people to choose is match all these words. Because match this phrase, in this case, it would work, but if your phrase is quite large and there is some, let's say it doesn't match up exactly, it might not pick up the results. So I usually say keep it to just a few keywords and then match all these words and then add it here. And so once again, if you watch this box, you can see what my search is. Click on search. And then I've got the different treaties. I haven't clicked on one of these results. I'm going to do that now. Just to show you, this will tell you information about the treaty. I will tell you the registration number, the participants, the place and date of conclusion, the authentic text, more about it. And in this case here, it's linking you to the volume of the treaty series that has that treaty in it. So you actually have to then go into do a Control F search to find the treaty itself, but it is in that volume. Sometimes here under text documents, there will be a link directly to that treaty itself. And this information, sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. It sort of depends on what treaty you're looking at. In fact, I'm going to do another example where I'm going to clear this out. And I'm going to search by English title. And just to show you that it's useful, if I search for something called landmines here, click on search, and I'm looking for a convention on landmines. You'll see I get one. I'm not getting the one I'm looking for because I'm looking for the one about anti-personnel mines. So the word landmine is not in there. So then if I used, let's see, so there's the Convention on the Prohibition of the Use, Stockpiling, Production, and Transfer of Anti-Personnel Mines. This is where I would suggest to you, if you just put in mines or anti-personnel mines and do that as a match all these things, rather than putting in the entire phrase, because if you get something wrong, the results might not show up. This is an example here where there's a lot more information about this treaty, because in fact, this is a treaty where the depository is the Secretary General. So when you're searching in the treaty collection, it will vary depending on what information is available and what they put into the database. But you can find that information by searching under the treaty section by English title or by French title if you wanted to. You can also under here search by date of conclusion, place of conclusion, registration number if you have that, the submitter. There's lots of information here. So that's why I encourage people to use this advanced search rather than these ones here, because you can combine those different searches so that you're getting a way to search all of those things there. So that's what I'm going to say on the treaty series. As I said, I'll have time to answer questions at the end. I'm going to move on now to the diplomatic conferences and, in fact, to the UN legal publications that are coming from Codification Division. So this can be found if you go to the library website. I put in our old URL. It's actually un.org/library. So that was on me. Find databases, international law. And then if I say UN databases here, if I scroll down, where you're going to find all of the legal publications that are produced by Codification is here under UN legal publication. And then you can find some of them, like I'm going to talk about the Juridical Yearbook shortly under there. But if you click on UN Legal Publication Global Search, you'll find the products that I'm now going to talk about. The link is also here, though, if you want to go directly to it from the link. So diplomatic conferences, what this is it's something you can see. It says Codification Division Publications. These are the official records of diplomatic conferences where treaties are negotiated. Now, a lot of these documents that are available in these official records will also be available in the UN Digital Library or in the official document system, but in some cases, not all of them will be in there. For instance, working papers or informal texts, things like that might be in the official records here, but not necessarily in those databases. So you can see, for instance, there's one for the establishment of the International Criminal Court. The 3 different conventions on the law of the sea are there. The conference related to consular relations, all of those are there. So I'm going to click on Law of the Sea here. And what I can do is I can search all documents, or I can go into a particular session. And you can see here I'm getting a listing of all the documents. And if I scroll down, for instance, here are the working papers of the plenary. If I click on that, then click on English, it will show me the text that's here. So this is basically a a copy of the volumes that are those official records. So I could search a particular volume. I could search across Law of the Sea if I wanted to. And if I had my document symbol here, so for instance, this one I was looking for ACOMF 62. I see I already typed it in there. I can search for it by document symbol here. I actually see that what I'm getting is not, in fact, the result I want, but there's working paper 8. And then if I look down further, I can see part 3. There's Rev part 1. So it's somewhere in my results there. Another thing I can do is do a full text search across all of the official records here. So you know when you're searching, this guide is always on here, and this will apply to all of the Codification Division publications. It's the same database that is underneath these publications, and it's the same way of searching. So the default is exact phrase, which means, for instance, if I were to type in informal text, it's going to look for informal text as a phrase. And you can see here, though, I have other options of the type of searching I want to do. I can search for any of these words. So basically, I'm asking the system to look for informal or text anywhere. That's going to give me a lot of results. Or all of these words, I'm looking for those 2 words, but they don't have to be together. So like informal negotiating text or something like that. And then there's a Boolean search as well. So all of this is explained here. Just to show you an example, if I choose all of these words here, it tells you here that you put quotation marks around phrases. So if I were to look for informal text, I would put that in phrases. And then I put a plus or a minus in front of a word. If I want it to appear, I would use the plus, and a minus if I don't want it to appear. Click on search. And then when I look at this result here, you can see contained within this, I will find things related to baselines and the informal texts that are there. So that's how you search in this database. You would just basically, the default is that exact phrase search, but you can also, when you actually go into the search functionality here, it explains a little bit more about how you search. So if you're looking for those diplomatic conferences, they are available through that diplomatic conferences website. Now, the other publication that I want to talk about is the UN Juridical Yearbook. And the reason I want to point out the UN Juridical Yearbook is because we find it to be a very useful tool for a number of reasons. So it was first published in 1963. The most recent volume that's available is 2015, and it's been published every year. And what is contained in the Juridical Yearbook is it will tell you all of the legal developments in the UN for that year. I'm going to go to research by year here, just to show you. One of the things that's very useful about the Juridical Yearbook is it's had the same format since 1963. So there's always part 1, which relates to the legal status of the UN, and it will have chapters related to any legislation concerning the legal status, any treaties concerning the legal status of the UN, or related intergovernmental organizations like UNESCO or the specialized agencies. Part 2 will be the legal activities of the UN. So this will be all the legal activities as it relates to particular topics. You can see here. Scrolling down. My apologies if I'm scrolling too fast, but I'm happy to go back to any of these resources at the end. Then we've got treaties that have been concluded under the auspices of the UN, decisions of the administrative tribunals of the UN. Scrolling down further, this is what we particularly like in the library, is this selected legal opinions of the secretariats of the UN and related organizations. So these are opinions that are coming from the Office of Legal Affairs on particular questions related to, you can see, for instance, this one is related to the laissez-passer and who gets it. And then there will be other legal questions that are in there as well. And then scrolling down, there's stuff that's related to the judicial decisions coming from the international tribunals and in some cases the national tribunals. And then part 4 is a bibliography. So it's been structured this way since the very beginning. And the reason that I point that out is because if you know, for instance, that you want to search only the legal opinions of the Secretariat, and that's often why we're using the juridical yearbook in the library, is that you can then search that chapter, and you can search from 1963 until 2015. So if I scroll up to the top, you can see you can research by year, but you can also research by chapter. So if I selected chapter 6 here, knowing that that's the legal opinions, and then I click here to search chapter 6 and special editions, I can search for whatever it is that I'm looking for in this case. So once again, it's the same search functionality as the diplomatic conferences. Here, I'm going to change this to all of the words, and I'm going to say privileges and immunities plus experts. There. And then when I click on search, when I look at my results here, there is in fact a case in here. Unfortunately, what it gets you is the volume. It gets you the section. It doesn't take you to exactly where your keywords are. So you actually then have to search for your keywords. So you can see here, there's an inter-office memorandum related to the status of experts on missions. So then I can look at that note to see that legal opinion there. So that's one of the reasons that we find the juridical yearbook to be particularly valuable. Just point out as well, when you're searching this chapter 6, it is the legal opinions that have been put in for every year. They've also done another volume, which is some select legal opinions that have not previously been published in the juridical yearbook. So it's chapter 6 plus some other legal opinions as well. So that's what we find to be very useful in the juridical yearbook. Just going back to my PowerPoint. The next codification publication I want to talk about is the Repertory of Practice of the United Nations Organs. So we have done in the past a training session on UN Charter. And what we tell people when they're looking at information that relates to the UN Charter, we tell people to start with a book. And that book is a commentary on the UN Charter, edited by Bruno Sima. This is a book we turn to again and again. It's a 2-volume book that talks about the UN Charter, article by article. It will tell you how it was negotiated and how it was applied. The Repertory of Practice of the United Nations Organs is kind of like that, only more so. So if the Bruno Sima book is 2 volumes, this is like 10. So what you would use this particular publication for, if you go under Charter of Nations here, is you can look up a particular article of the Charter of the United Nations, and you can see how the UN has applied or interpreted that particular article of the UN Charter. So if I, for instance, go under membership here, and I click on Article 4, and now you see it's basically been put out. The first one was put out and covers the year 1945 to 1954. And then there have been more supplements since that cover a particular period of time between 5 to 10 years. And you can choose which volume you want to look at here. So if I choose supplement number 8 here, click on English here, this will tell me basically the text of Article 4, how it's been used, and in this case, which states have been admitted to the UN, actions taken by the Security Council and by the General Assembly. If I scroll down further, there's an analytic summary of practice that will tell you about what's been done at the UN as it relates to the question of universality of the organization, that sort of thing. So if you want analysis of the UN Charter and a sort of a recording of what the UN has done as it relates to the UN Charter, that's when you would turn to the repertoire of practice of United Nations organs. So it's a useful publication to know about when you're doing that charter research. I just want to point out that there is another product that is called the Repertoire of Practice of the Security Council. The Repertoire of Practice of the Security Council also has some charter elements to it, but it also does analysis of what the Security Council has done as it relates to particular agendas or procedural issues. So it's a very useful tool when it comes to researching the Security Council at large, whereas this one is a particularly good tool when looking at the whole of the United Nations system as it relates to the UN Charter. I just sort of want to mention both of them because sometimes there's confusion because one's the Repertoire of Practice of the Security Council, one's the Repertory of Practice of the United Nations organs. They're both very good tools, but slightly different purposes. And then, still speaking of things coming out of codification, I want to talk about the analytical guide of the work of the International Law Commission. So this is actually not a UN publication, or sorry, not a codification division publication. So it's a little bit of a lie that I put this under that group of publications. You can see here that this is actually coming from the International Law Commission website. So if I click on home here, that's the International Law Commission website. Under research, I will find here the analytic guide. Now the analytic guide here is basically what it is it will tell you how the International Law Commission has studied a particular topic and give you all of the related documents to it. So here, if I were to choose, for instance, under sources of international law, reservations to treaties, this is a listing of all of the documents that relate to what the ILC has done as it relates to reservation of treaties. So you can see it tells you the mandate that was given to the ILC to study this, studies undertaken by the Secretariat and reports of the Secretary General, reports of working groups, subcommittees, reports of special rapporteurs. Scrolling down further, reports of the drafting committees. You've got comments by government, and then reports of the International Law Commission. Scrolling down further, you then at the end have General Assembly action and then final outcome. Now you'll see it will often reference back to UN documents. You can tell that by the document symbol there. So you should be able to find most of this information in the UN Digital Library. It will be indexed as ILC documents, but sometimes this website will have things that are more than just the documents themselves. So it might make reference to the UN or to the ILC yearbook. Sometimes it will, I'm trying to see an example here, but I'm not sure if I can. But anyways, it's basically one place that you can go that's going to have all of those documents related to the ILC. If I click on summary, this is going to tell me, once again, it's kind of like that procedural history in the audiovisual library. It will tell me what was done on the work of the International Law Commission as it relates to the reservation of treaties. And then under text and instruments, that's going to give you your final text or instruments that is coming out of this study on this particular topic in the International Law Commission. at the International Law Commission, this analytic guide, if you go there, you can find all of the documents related together. So yeah, each entry will give you the relevant documents for a topic studied by the ILC. And then finally, I just want to point out this one tool that's on the UN internal justice system, the digest of case law. So you can search for individual cases that are before the dispute tribunals and the appeals tribunals. You can do that if you go under each of these and you go to judgments and orders, you can look for them there. But I just wanted to highlight this resource because I think it's quite useful, and it's this digest of case law that covers 2009 to 2019. And when you look here, what this will tell you is basically it organizes the case law by subjects and is basically like it is a digest, and it will tell you, for instance, if I go under abolition of post, it will give you the head notes of a particular judgment, the applicable law related to this judgment, the legal principle, the UN dispute tribunal judgment, the UN appeal tribunal decision. And then if you scroll down, it will actually link to the various judgments that are here. So if you're doing any research that's related to these judgments that are part of the internal justice system, I think this digest is very good because it's basically putting everything together under different subject headings. And of course, you can do a Control F search and search for your keywords through there. I just think it's a relatively easy way to approach anytime you're looking for case law in this internal justice system that is by particular subjects or addressing particular issues. And then just finally, point out that we are always available. I've highlighted only a few of the resources that we actually have available. And as I said, I haven't even talked about the subscription resources, but I'm happy to do at the end of this session. But you can always use AskDag to ask questions. So just as an example here, if you're not familiar with AskDag, we have our little chat box where you can talk to someone in the library, and you can type in whatever it is you're looking for. So if I start to type in a question, I can find an answer, and then it will give me some links in that answer to finding more information. But you can always contact us through AskDag, through the chat there. You'll have our contact information, of course, at the end of this training, as well as a recording of this training. So by all means, feel free to reach out if there's anything that we haven't covered. Otherwise, enjoy your day. Good luck with your research, and reach out to us if you do need help.